everybody, and welcome to Fanatic Materialists. I am Lorenzo, and I am the tech lead of Stellaris. And today, we're going through the cool and techy stuff of our favorite game. We have collected a few questions here, and we're going to go through them and see if we have interesting answers for you. I have with me Gustav and Pierre and Gwenael. Would you mind introduce yourself and what you do in Stellaris?
So, hi guys, my name is Gustav. I am one of the programmers of the Stellaris team.
Hi, I'm Pierre. I'm a content designer. I specialize in ridiculously looping scripts and doing script support.
Hello, I'm Gwenael. I used to be tech lead on Stellaris, then I was a programmer, and now I am elsewhere.
So here we are, and I think that we should actually get started. I have actually one question for you, Gustav.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm always ready.
Okay. What are some of the coding challenges in making sure that multiplayer games are able to stay in sync, especially over longer time frames?
Oh, yes, this is indeed an interesting question. Is it quite broad area as well? Our multiplayer simulation, as you might know it, is a lock sync simulation. That means that each computer is running the same simulation locally. So everything needs to be in sync between them, the randoms and stuff like that. And now the main culprits has changed a bit during the years of development. I mean, from being mostly that everything the player does through the UI was perhaps not sent by commands through the network, and thus only affecting the local machine, towards perhaps more advanced problems like the standard libraries of different platforms not doing exactly the same when it's not stable algorithms being used here and there. Also, threading has been a bit of an issue, that multi-threaded code is run in a fashion where we can't guarantee the order in the end. But yeah, it's a huge topic. So what do you rest of you guys think? I mean, I think Gwen, you have done a lot of OS hunting as well in your days.
Yeah, I did, and I think like a lot of the issues come from the random generator, like not being called in the same order. So you have the same values, but like in one case because of the threading, so you have one event being checked first, and then you have the factions being checked, and on the other machine it's the other way around. So the factions are checked first, then you have the event. So the random numbers that they get are switched. And what we do is that we generate a lot of random numbers before separating them into thread, and we send those random numbers to each thread. But sometimes people forget to use these random numbers and call the random number generator directly instead, and then you get an out of sync.
In addition to that, actually, we have another trick that we generate the seeds. Well, generate the seeds. We take the seeds from stable IDs from the objects as well to get around the problem. So there is a few things you can do, but it's still a bit too easy to fall into the pits sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, I can tell that I have had experience myself, like introducing a lot of them. It's not so fun when you do that, but it happens, and investigating them is actually quite... it's not trivial, investigating them most of the time. So that's why we really try hard not to introduce them.
And now, when you mention it, the last one I actually introduced that I know of course, was serialization in the espionage with the economic system, the upkeep not going as it should. We found it before release, unfortunately.
Yeah, if I can bounce on that, another big source of out of things, at least when people are joining, is when we try to be very smart and not save the data but recalculate it. And then we send the data to the person who's joining, and they're not exactly at the same step. They only have the data that's in the save file, but the data they calculate is somewhat different because some other data that is not in the save file has not been calculated yet or was not at the same step as well. So that's another source, like why there are so many out of things after our join. It's because we try to save space in the save file.
Yeah, I agree though, when the multiple caches and keeping them up to date, especially when one party has played the game for a while and one party comes fresh, can definitely be a bit of a hassle when it comes to synchronization as well.
Oh yeah, I mean it's gonna be always something painful to handle.
Yeah,
but we are doing our best, and results you can see them. Okay, let's move on to the next question then. Let me see. Yes, I will actually ask the next question to Gwenael. So, what is or was the most over-engineered feature in Stellaris?
Wow, that's a trick question. Over-engineered is a bit of a fraught word, right? It can mean several things, and obviously the first thing that comes to mind is the POP system. I mean, you can say it's more of a design question, but the POPs gives a lot of flexibility, right? But it also makes a lot of things much harder, like just trying to find the best POP for a specific job, or the AI deciding what building to work, to build, I mean. And it can do that easily by saying, oh yeah, this building is going to give me this. It has to do like, okay, I have this building that's going to give me this job, and now I have to check what POPs can work these jobs and what's the best POP for these jobs and what it's going to give me. So that's making things more complicated. And of course, we have also like the factions and trying to balance the various ethics across POPs. So that has brought many complications in terms of code, but a lot of flexibility on the interesting channel in terms of design. But if we're talking just about code that is maybe too flexible for what it does, I can talk about the orbiters. Like we have a system for orbitable, so you can orbit them, and we have orbiters which can only be fleet in the game. The only thing that can orbit something else is a fleet, but we have a lot of flexibility around what orbiters can be. Isn't that right, Gustav?
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to designing game code, I mean, we get our design from the designer. I mean, but in the end, we know that the design is going to change like 50 times before we are finished. So I highly like flexible system that might be a bit harder to maintain. But otherwise, I mean, Stellaris is a fairly complex game in general, in all. I mean, just like a simple system for the ship designer, where you have this ship size that can have different sections, and the section has different components, and the components might have a turret, it might be a fixed beam, it might be some utility, and then you add the freedom of actually designing the ships yourself. I mean, the ship designer, when using it inside, it's one of my favorite features. I really dig a lot of sitting in my ship designer and not always min-maxing, but doing stuff. But I know when adding a new ship size with these sections and adding all dependencies, when what equipment it should be able to have, which slot sizes, I sometimes I feel like from my professional side, it might have been easier to not have it.
But what do you think, Pierre?
As content designers, we do wish that there was no such thing as ships in Stellaris, because there's a million different settings you can do in about 17 different files. And you have to get them all right, otherwise the ship will misbehave. So that's a very big candidate for an over-engineered system.
Yeah, and the last one I would mention is probably the pathfinding, but I think this might be more an issue of tech debt than really over-engineering. The pathfinding, the original A-star implementation was just fine, but over time we've added so many special cases on like new things to block you or to be a shortcut that then the code kind of evolved its own sentience and is trying to eat all of Stellaris.
Yeah, I totally agree, Gwen, there. But I'm going to jump to the next question, and that's for you, Lorenzo. Considering the huge amount of notification in Clausewitz games, would making an API for hooking them to external devices or programs be an interesting development? Like smart bulbs or, I don't know, RGB backgrounds? My Google Home?
I mean, yes, but no, not really. I mean, yes, we have a huge amount of notifications and things happening in the background in the game. There's like a whole galaxy of events happening and moving around. But really, I don't think that we are planning anything related to devices like that one. On the other hand, though, having a real-time monitoring of the data is something that it is very, very near to my heart. I'm actually dreaming, even though it's not going to be for devices, third-party devices connected to that, I'm dreaming of setting up a system so that we could monitor a game and what is happening in a game during the course of the game in real time, like collecting data, and this will help a lot while developing and debugging the behavior of the AI, for example, the frequencies of events, performances, and all sorts of choices that are made in the game, both by the AI and the players. It would be like super cool, even though it's not going to be attached to an RGB, maybe.
I think I know what you will do on your next PDT then.
Maybe.
Let's see here. And my next question it's for you, Pierre. While a large part of the code base is open to modders to mess with, there are some parts that cannot be modified or looked at. Why was this decision taken?
Thank you. And it's an interesting question, Gustav. There's quite a few factors at play. First of all, in many cases, we just have never needed to change them. So modders can see what basically I can see as a content designer. So if I need something changed, if I need to be able to access something, then I will either myself or ask a programmer to get myself able to access it. And in cases where we've never had to do that, where we've never needed to change it, then we just don't have the support to change it yet, which obviously we might get in future when we need it in that case. In other cases, we consciously decide to do something in code. That would be done usually if it would be too complicated in script for modders, or if it would hurt performance because it's way more efficient to do it in the C++ source code. And finally, I'd say that an ideal feature to me would be something which is mainly done in code, but has enough toggles and flexibility that the content designer can hook in just enough to change how it works to make it great and flavorful in every case.
Ooh, this one. I have this one for you, Gustav.
Oh.
Are you ready? So, Clausewitz was originally built around map-based games with limited 3D support, aside from that on the flat plane. How was the transition to a fully 3D environment, and how has this impacted the development cycle of the title?
Well, I was not with Stellaris from the beginning, but I can tell you that it's not a full 3D game. The simulation itself is only doing 2 dimensions and time. I mean, we don't have any height in the actual simulation. The height is faked or added later on, either by putting stuff in several planes, different planes, log planes, or by recreatable random values for fleet positioning and stuff like that. The star systems as well at the galactic map level. So during the time Stellaris was developed, it was simultaneously with the Hearts of Iron 4. And I mean, if you look at that map, for example, it's not flat. We have 3D support there as well. But Stellaris setting makes it feel more like a 3D game, I would say. So that's the difference.
Okay, interesting. A lot of modability features were added in 3.0. What plans are there to further improve Stellaris scripting language in the future?
Big plans, Lorenzo. So I like my variables, and we have always had them in Stellaris script, but we could use them in a fairly limited amount of places now. With Nemesis, we added it in a few places, but now we'll be able to do anything, almost anything. With, I'll say almost, definitely almost everything with variables, which is very exciting because it adds a lot of flexibility to the script, and it means that we can do a lot of things which would have been very painful to do before, very easily now. Furthermore, we hope to look at some of the bottlenecks that modders have, which cause them to have to do overwrites or just not be able to do anything. We cleared a few of those for Nemesis. We still want to clear more in future. Yeah, stay tuned. There's lots of great stuff coming for modders in the next version.
Then, when thinking about some of the more recent features, feature additions to Stellaris, how much work and time goes into coding each of them into the game before the feature starts getting tested?
Well, a lot. So, if you're interested in development in general, you may know the concept of waterfall development and agile development, and the main difference in between the two. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, but the main difference between the two is that the waterfall is you work on something and then you deliver the whole of it, while in the agile you work in iterative process, delivering smaller pieces, then reviewing them and deciding how to proceed. Well, in Stellaris, we are definitely trying to be agile as much as we can, but it doesn't always succeed. And we've had cases of features that spent a lot of time implementing a backend that was flawless, but failed in showing to the designers the mechanic early. And that, of course, makes it more difficult because it reduces the amount of time that we can dedicate to balancing and improving, polishing a feature, when it actually happened that we spend more time on the backend of the feature. So yeah, it is something that happened. I mean, I think that any of us here has gone through something like this, one way or the other.
Do you have any favorite length of sprint time?
Favorite length of sprint time? Not really. I like short. I like shorter. And we're actually trying to move toward a more and more agile process, having a shorter time, having a faster iterations, continuous delivery, and make sure that we always provide something, even small, for people to play with the game and designers to play with the game, so that they can go further in their investigation of what is actually fun and best for the end. It's easier to actually steer toward the right direction if we do small baby steps instead of like one big, huge step.
So true.
So when you're
Please.
So when you're talking about continuous delivery, are we talking like full Facebook commit to live continuous delivery?
No, we are not. But I like to use that name because it's one of the buzzwords of I think of the last decade, not this one. But I like that term because it explains exactly what we would like to do with the rest of the team and the designers, and it is to quickly provide something new to them for them to play, so that they can quickly provide us feedback, and together we can improve the feature and reach an amazing result.
Is there a feature that has been on the design table and ready to go for a long time, but due to time constraints, budget, etc., has been left out of the game?
Yeah, there's several such features, and the one that comes to mind is the sector rework. We have not delivered the full sector rework, and that's really a shame. But we've always had to cut the various iterations that has been done through it, either because other features were in difficulties and we needed to go and help them, or because other issues came up on the time of the person working on it. Had to shift the priorities. I mean, so unfortunately, we never finished the full sector rework as Daniel envisioned it. I do not lose hope that it's going to happen, but yeah, it's kind of out of my hands now. Unfortunately, too big for a PDT project. PDT is we get like one day every month to work on something that of our own choice, not necessarily related to the project, but that leads us to learn new things that we want to learn, or to improve things we want to improve.
This traits, Civics, and Origins use a fairly restrictive set of possible potential meters compared to other game systems. Why is this style taken instead of using the standard approach?
Right. Yeah, they use a very odd format, which is not seen anywhere else in the game. The basic reason for this is because we have to evaluate when we're setting up a species or a country for the game we're about to play, we need to be able to see the triggers, and we don't have a game yet. So you need to be able to match. We have to say that this civic can't be picked with this origin. This species trait can't be picked with this species class, stuff like that. If we allowed you to use every trigger, it would be very easy to put in triggers which either don't do anything because there's no game, or they crash the game because they assume that there will be a game, or galaxy that's been generated already. So people went for a extremely safe way, which carefully restricts all the things you can put in there. We have been trying to add a little bit more flexibility to it. So we're trying to let you see a few more values which are already accessible in the Galaxy setup screen. But sadly, it's not possible to evaluate most things. I'm afraid that this will stay as a thing.
Yeah, I will add as well that because of the interactions between them, on the fact that they can be picked in any order, you get in a situation where the choice of civics you can get depends on your ethics, or your choice of ethics depends on your civics. And same with the origin, and it's getting super complicated. And I think that also influences why the system is weird.
Yep, there's a very complicated bit of code which basically makes sure that any government that is picked either by you or randomly in when anything's being done, or by the AI, is valid, and it has to run quite a lot of checks, checking all the civics, all the origins, all the traits, everything. So adding stuff to that is hazardous.
In Europa Universalis 4 alone, there are around 5,000 indexed provinces. and in Hearts of Iron 4, there are over 13,000. In Stellaris, however, we only can get about 1,000 stars in a galaxy. What is the equivalent to provinces in Stellaris, and how has the space setting impacted the number of indexed provinces in game?
Well, first of all, I mean, Stellaris is, as we play it, is procedurally generated. So we don't have any index provinces at all. We don't have the concept of provinces. I mean, when looking at it, the province in Hearts of Iron is mostly for maneuvering troops. On the state level, you have production and stuff like that. In Stellaris, we have space where you can move your ships seamlessly, so we don't need provinces in that way. When it comes to building buildings, as you do in provinces in Europe Universalis, you do it on planet level. We have some movements on systems, so you could say that the provinces are split up between the star systems and the planets, depending on which aspect you're looking on it. And I mean, running a huge galaxy that has thousands of stars, you will have somewhere around 10,000 planets. Now, sure, I think it's only 5% that is habitable. Something around there, but it's a bit hard to compare it because the concepts differ a bit. But there is, I would say, that it's a similar amount in the end. It's just depending on how they are used by the game that sets what amount is more or less the proper amount.
Yeah, I believe that. In Stellaris, the concept of province that we have in Europa Universalis or in Hearts of Iron can't really be mapped one-to-one on anything because the systems themselves have a lot of information related to that and a lot of data that is updating all the time. But they're not the only thing that is happening in there. We are going to have every system has its own space in which you go around with your fleets and its own stations and planets, and planets have their own buildings and statistics on top. So it's very difficult to find something to pair up one-on-one. And I think that is the main reason behind blocking us from basically putting there a huge amount of those kind of things there without having like quantum computers or stuff like that.
I would
Plus
love
the
to
pups.
see. Oh, sorry, Gwen.
I said plus the pups. Like if you look at provinces production, our production unit is kind of the pups on the jobs. On the numbers grow over time, but we can reach a fair number of pups as well.
Actually, it's possible to mod in larger galaxy sizes, but you do so at your own risk. I heard someone tried to generate a 5,000 star galaxy, and it took 57 minutes.
So, Lorenzo, several community members have in the past discussed the alleged tech deficit in the game. Has something along these lines been recognized with the tech team? And if so, are they being addressed?
No, we absolutely don't have anything like that in our code. Our code is born perfect and flawless, and I'm lying. Unfortunately, yes. It is called tech debt, actually. It is something very common, not only in the game industry, it's common in the whole software development. It's funny because it's called tech debt because you are basically borrowing time from the future. You need some time now, so you get like a shortcut and you manage to deliver what you want in time, but the shortcut is going to cost you so much in the future. That is the interest. It's going to cost you so much in the future because it's going to make the code less maintainable, more difficult to keep up with performances, and more difficult to extend when we are going to add more and more features. So yes, we have tech debt. I have this revelation. But we also have a plan on it. I'm not thinking. I don't even think that we're going to be able to ever get to zero with the tech debt. But we plan on it. We plan a lot of work related to it. We have a backlog of things that we would like to improve, and why we also note down why we want to improve them, what will be improved and touched by those modifications. And when we plan for a new release, we allocate time to dedicate to that. We have done that, for example, also at the very beginning of the work done on the Nemesis release.
I personally think that if you do something more advanced than a Hello World application, you probably will end up with tech debt.
I mean, not really. You end up with tech debt if you do something even as simple as an Hello World with a deadline that is very tight. I mean, when you're lacking time, you get some kind of time from the future.
Cutting some corner.
You borrow some time from your future self.
Yeah, that's true. That.
I mean, it's not
I
only
think,
that. So it's also often you implement something and then you think a few days later, shit, that was not the best way of doing it. I could have done it so much better. But then you're on to the next task already.
Yeah, and I think tech debt gets a bad rep, but it's often necessary or sometimes good. Like if you look at debt, a lot of companies wouldn't survive without debt. And if we look at features, a lot of features wouldn't get delivered without tech debt. It's making sure that you repay the debt in the future that is important. And I'm a big fan of leaving the code better than you found it whenever you work on a piece of code. Yeah.
So, as we say, tech debt is not always something necessarily that bad. Let's move on something else. And I have a question from Gwenael now. Other than reducing the overall numbers of pops, what other aspects of pop behavior do you look at when trying to streamline their code?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. To understand that, you have to understand the big O notation, which is a notation for how big an O your mouse does when you look at the code. Yeah, so a lot of the early code for the pop was quadratic in nature. That means that every pop was checking every other pop. For example, you want to see what pop is the best for the job. So every pop compares its own score for this job to the score of every other pop on the planet. And then they forget about their score. And then the next pop re-asks everyone about their score for this job. And we had such things in many places. We had that for factions, like every pop would ask each faction, like, how many members do you have? And instead of keeping the number, they would recount the things. So it is added a lot of unnecessary complexities where every pop would ask every other pop. So you had the pop squared magnitude, if you will. And a lot of work has been done to make sure that we don't need to do that. So we do things in two passes where we calculate the scores for every pop at the beginning, and then each pop gets sorted, for example, or the faction numbers are calculated only once instead of once for each pop, etc., etc. Yeah. Yeah, that's the main thing we've done. I've also tried making super pops, which was grouping pops that are the same together and calculating things only once. So, for example, if you have a pop of a specific species with a specific faction and ethics, like every other pop would use the same numbers than this pop. But the results were not very good at the times, and it is something I would like to revisit during PDT, because like it's something that's been suggested to me a lot when I was tech lead. And I think there should be some kind of gain to be made there.
Okay, thank you, Gwenael. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions, and I would like to say thank you to the rest of the team joining me here for the panel, Gustav and Gwenael and Pierre. And I would also like to thank you all that were watching here, and I hope that you are gonna go and play more Stellaris.